Karen, we can't hear anything.
Good morning, everyone. We're at the top of the hour and ready to begin. My name is Karen Berger, and I want to welcome you to CASA's National News and Updates webinar. Today is March 17, and we have a nice lineup of presentations prepared for you today. Our presenters include Linda Taylor from CASAS, our Vice President of Assessment Development. Also joining us from CASAS is Technology Specialist Jessie Despain. We are delighted to welcome our colleague from San Mateo Adult and Career Education, Tia Marlowe. Tia will be sharing with us about testing multiple students remotely. Thank you, Tia, for joining, and we are looking forward to what you have to share. This slide shows a few features of this Zoom webinar. The first point is that your microphones are muted due to the large numbers. So the best way to communicate with us with questions about the presentation is through the Q&A. Any questions that are not answered during the webinar will be added to our frequently asked questions on the website. The chat box is only to be used for technical difficulties with using Zoom. The last bullet point has a link where you can find copies of today's presentations to download, and we will put that link in the chat as well. This little graphic shows your Zoom toolbar and controls. Of particular interest is the green bubble, highlighting the Q&A, which we already mentioned. This is where you can post your questions about the presentations. Then, if you look at the bottom, going from left to right, there's a button at the bottom of your screen where you can check your audio settings. Then the chat feature, which I mentioned, should only be used if you have technical difficulties with Zoom. And we will not be using the raise hand feature today due to the large numbers in the audience. So here's what the Q&A will look like. As you can see at the top, you can click back and forth to view your own answers and questions and answers, or to see all questions and answers. We will be recording this webinar and it will be posted early tomorrow. You can go to casas.org to view today's and previous webinars on the CASAS News and Updates page. And now I'll hand the meeting over to Linda.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Glad you could take some time out and be with us. This is an informational webinar, not a training, and hopefully some very useful information for you today. We're going to remind everybody about the current status of our CASAS test series and talk about collecting demographics. As Karen mentioned, we're going to have a great presentation. I think you'll really enjoy it, on testing multiple students remotely. We'll give you a little update on our remote testing efforts. Then we're going to have a TOPS Pro Enterprise update that will include a demo, and then some CASAS news. So to begin with, about our new CASAS test series, here's the current situation. Hopefully this is familiar to all of you, but just to be clear, for ABE and ASE, the series you need to be using now for NRS funded programs is Reading Goals for ABE ASE, that's approved through 2025, and Math Goals, if you test using math, that is was recently updated to be approved through 2023. For ESL, there's the Life and Work series, Life and Work Reading, the 80 series, the Beginning Literacy, 27 and 28. And if you are permitted to use it also, there's the Reading for Language Arts tests that are you could use for NRS reporting. And then listening, it's the 980 series. So these tests, again, some few months ago were extended through 2023. And that's the same as all other NRS approved tests from other test publishers. Our new series, the status of those is that Reading Goals still has a way to go. Till 2025, you'll be using that. Though actually we are already working on the new series. It takes a long time to develop a new series. Math Goals for ABE is approved through 2023. And we will be submitting to NRS to have that extended. For ESL, we have two new series that are all constructed, but we are missing the research, the field testing on the final forms so that we can submit it. And due to COVID, that has been challenging. But Karen's going to talk in a minute about how you can help with that if you're willing. These series are aligned to the College and Career Readiness Standards, and for ESL, they're aligned to the ELP standards. So these new series for ESL will replace eventually the current Life and Work series. What's new about them and something you can look forward to is that they will have 5 skill levels. Currently there's A to D for reading, A to C for listening, but they will have more levels of test forms, parallel forms, and that should help in a number of ways in terms of, we think, reduced retesting at that point, and perhaps even more accurate measurement. As I mentioned, they're aligned to these standards. So they will, if you've already aligned your curriculum to those standards, they will be also aligned. We have mentioned in the last few months that we do need your help on these research studies to get some demographics. As you may have seen, there are sometimes some unscored items in our operational test forms on e-tests. And so your students are actually taking them as part of their regular tests. But, and for those of you who already collect these demographics and more, we can definitely use those results. But for those of you who don't normally collect demographics in e-tests and that would go in TOPS Pro Enterprise, we are requesting you to please, these 4 data elements are the ones that we particularly need in order to complete these studies. So now we're going to show you a little animated version of this. I'll turn it over to Karen to show you that. Karen, go ahead.
Thanks, Linda. I'd like to give you a quick overview and update of CASAS field testing studies with our new final forms for listening and reading for ESL. Once approved, as Linda mentioned, these forms will replace the current Life and Work forms that are now approved through February 2023. These studies are ongoing and will continue well into the next program year. ESL learners and ABE students whose first language is not English may participate. The tests are available both in e-tests and on pencil paper. Obviously, e-tests and paper can be done on site, and e-tests can also be done remotely. The students receive gift cards, and agencies receive complimentary web test units. And we also have some frequently asked questions and other information available on our webpage. You may wonder how many learners you can test. There is no minimum, and we need thousands. So the cap is pretty high. Your participation is such a vital part of test development because we use the data we gather from the field test results to make sure the assessments are valid and reliable for all adult learners. I'd like to extend many thanks to all of you who have already expressed interest, and some of you have even begun field testing. We hope that as the rest of you are getting back into the rhythm of the regular program testing, you might consider partnering with us as well. Even if you are unable to participate at the moment, we hope you'll think about it in the upcoming months. You can contact me at fieldtesting@casas.org. And don't forget to visit the web. There's lots of great information there. Thank you all in advance. We so appreciate your support. Linda?
So now we've come to the part of the session where we're going to have Tia Marlowe talk to us about testing multiple students remotely. So welcome, Tia.
Thank you.
And can you first just tell us a little bit about your program, please?
Our program is based in San Mateo, California. This is just an overview of the state and federally funded programs that we offer, as well as student count. Our largest population is our English language learners. So yeah, we pretty much cater to that population.
All right, and you serve others as well, so that's
Correct, we
really
do.
great. Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you. So now we do have a pre-recorded presentation by Tia, and after that, we're going to come back live and she's going to answer some additional questions.
Hello, my name is Tia Marlowe, and I am the Student Data Analyst at the San Mateo Adult and Career Education School in San Mateo, California. This is my presentation on testing multiple students remotely. Steps to success: testing multiple students remotely using Windows 10 devices. Organize and communicate with your teachers and proctors. Create a detailed schedule. Prepare for remote testing. Plan out the steps on testing day. Helpful tips. Make sure staff and teachers are informed about remote testing policies, procedures, and expectations. Conduct a school-wide meeting where remote testing is discussed. Send a follow-up email to all staff and teachers reiterating what was discussed at the school-wide meeting. Include in the email documentation for remote testing from CASAS. Instruct teachers to go over policies and procedures for remote testing with their students. Offer proctor assistance during class time to those teachers who need help with preparing their students for CASAS testing. Create a folder in a teacher-shared drive that has all remote testing information and documentation. Preparation: remote classroom remote testing. Create a testing schedule by class and level. We found it to be much easier to test the higher levels first, since those students tend to have more tech skills and a higher level of English comprehension. The lower levels require more time, guidance, and sometimes more proctors if they need to test one-on-one. Include in the schedule the proctors who will be testing the class along with the proctor's Zoom links. All proctors have their own Zoom links for remote testing. This is worth the expense because it can be difficult to remote test using the classroom Zoom link. Give the teacher the phone number of the proctor in case problems occur. At our school, our proctors are comfortable with sharing their phone numbers with teachers. Email the schedule to all staff and teachers so that everyone is aware of which classes are testing on which days. A few days before remote testing. A few days before remote testing, send the teacher a reminder email of what to expect the day of testing. We ask our teachers to make sure every student has their student ID number. We also ask teachers to remind students to be patient when they come to test because it can be a long process. Day of testing. On the day of classroom testing, 2 proctors are assigned. They can test up to 10 students, 5 students per proctor. Both proctors enter a scheduled class Zoom meeting to introduce themselves and see how many students are available for testing that day. If there are more than 10 students available to be tested, the proctors select 10 to be tested that day and schedule the rest for another testing time. The proctors divide the students into 2 groups of 5 and assign each group to a proctor. The proctors then put their own Zoom links in the chat and instruct the students to click the appropriate link in 5 minutes. The students enter the main room of the proctor's Zoom meeting. Most of the agreements, Part B, Step 1 in the guidelines, can be done in the small group in the main room, getting individual agreement from each student, except verifying the student ID and the room scan. The proctor puts the eTest's online website URL in the chat and instructs the students to click that link. The proctor instructs the students to click the Take a Test button and then register their own computer as the testing station. Follow the instructions on page 7 of the Approach to Remote Testing Guidelines to do this using a station registration code. Each student is then put into a breakout room. The proctor goes to the first breakout room and asks the first student to share their screen and do a room scan. The proctor asks the student to enter their ID in the Enter Your ID field and verify that the student's ID is correct. Begin the test for the student. The proctor repeats this process for the other students in the other breakout rooms. During the test, the proctor circulates among the breakout rooms, visiting each breakout room every few minutes. Proctors actively monitor the eTest test session activity webpage. Check if students are progressing through the test. Are they stuck or going very slowly? Are they going too fast, possibly guessing or cheating? Providing proctors with a second monitor, if possible, is very helpful. We have 4 types of scheduled testing: remote classroom remote testing, remote classroom makeup remote testing, drop-in remote testing, on-site in-person testing. We've created scheduled drop-in remote testing Zoom links. These Zoom links are available morning, afternoon, and evening. Teachers are instructed to give the Zoom links to students who missed taking their test during the classroom testing time. Our drop-in testing Zoom link testing times are in 3-hour blocks. ESL and high school diploma GED students are welcome. Tips: have your attendance application open. We use ASAP. This is helpful if a student shows up and doesn't have their ID number. Have TE open. This is helpful if there is a new student that for some reason didn't get exported into TE. You can add them manually and get them tested. Have a backup proctor available in case the lead proctor runs into problems or needs help. Again, this is Tia Marlowe from the San Mateo Adult and Career Education School in San Mateo, California. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tia. I just want everyone to know that we have so much to learn from Tia and her program. She has done a lot of remote testing and is really a font of knowledge about it. And so to kind of, in addition, I just want to mention too that that presentation, the PowerPoint for it will be available just as also as a separate piece on our website. So, you know, we asked Tia if she would go through step by step very concretely and clearly, and that's what she just did in that recording. You can go back and really, hopefully, we're hoping you can use this as a guide to follow and see how it can be done to test up to 5 students. We know that many of you are just testing one-on-one, and we know your proctors may only be comfortable with that, and that's fine. And you should not really strongly say, don't force your proctors to do anything they're not comfortable doing. But if they are comfortable doing more than one and up to 5 currently, then this is a way that you can do it in, as you can see, very practical ways. So we're going to do some follow-up now with Tia. First of all, we want to show you the schedules that she uses for her remote testing and even the on-site testing. So this first one is the classroom. Sorry, it's quite a mouthful, right, Tia? The classroom remote testing schedule for ESL in the morning.
Yes, correct. So we have this for the morning, for the afternoon, and for the evening. We have schedules for all three of those options. Again, each class is assigned a proctor or two, depending on the amount of students in the class. We do start from the higher levels because we find that it's much easier because those students tend to have higher tech skills and a higher level of English comprehension.
So Tia, is this a 2-week period and then you just keep going, or is it, how does that work?
That's a good question. So this is a 2-week period, and then after this, we go into our makeup classroom remote testing schedule, where we schedule for each class, for those students who for some reason couldn't make the scheduled classroom remote testing time.
Mm-hmm. So this is just a 2-week period. How often? Like once a semester you do this? Initially.
Normally, well, yeah, normally we do it twice a semester, but because of all that we've gone through, we're doing it just once a semester. We don't want to overload our students and our teachers with a lot of in and out of their classrooms and the students. So just once right now.
Okay. And now there's another schedule or some information from Tia's program. Tia, could you walk us through this, please?
So this is our drop-in CASAS testing. So we have 3 options here. The weekday on-site drop-in testing schedule, that's available to any students who didn't make the classroom remote testing schedule time. Those students who, for some reason, started later after the classroom testing time, they can just drop in during those scheduled times and take their test. For the Saturday on-site, we wanted to offer our evening students an opportunity to test on-site if they felt comfortable. So that's why we scheduled our Saturday on-site testing. We do that outside on tables, and we provide laptops to our students, weather permitting.
Luckily in California, you can do that this time of year, but hopefully soon others around the country can also do that.
Correct. And then, I'm sorry, I didn't talk about the remote drop-in. So the remote drop-in is each proctor has their own remote Zoom link, drop-in Zoom link. And so students can, come during those times to drop in during any of those times to take their test. Again, if they miss their test or if they need to take a post-test, anything like that.
I see. So, and tell us, who do you prioritize? I see the Saturday is by appointment only. Do you prioritize who comes for on-site testing as opposed to remote?
For the Saturday, we do. We try to we try to offer it mostly to the evening students because, again, some of them can't make it during the remote classroom testing time or even the drop-in testing time during the weekday. We also offer it. We prioritize the lower levels, those students who are low literacy, high beginning, who require paper tests. So yes.
Okay, and how do the students come to know about these drop-in options?
So this information is emailed to all the teachers. It's also put in the teacher shared drive so that teachers can give the students this information along with the proctor Zoom links. And they sometimes post a schedule in their Google Classrooms, things like that.
Okay. So let me ask you a few questions now about the breakout rooms, because that's the tricky part, or one of the tricky parts, right, about doing the multiple test takers at the same time. So if you could talk a little bit more about proctoring students in breakout rooms, what kind of issues do students have in terms of needing help during the test?
So the biggest issue is, for those students who aren't tech savvy, guiding them through downloading the app having to create to make their laptop a registered station, then putting in their ID number. That's where it become very tricky. If a student has a high level of tech skills, I found it to be fairly easy process. So we run into problems, in that regard when we're doing the download mostly. Other than that, not so much.
Mm-hmm. Are there things like household interruptions, other kinds of interruptions or technical interruptions that you have to deal with?
I've been doing it for quite a while, and I've never had a household interruption. I
Okay.
haven't personally. I haven't. Most of the students are very. They have really good classroom etiquette. They go into a very quiet room, and yeah, I haven't had that problem at all.
Okay, that's great. Can you talk a little bit about how it works? Because as we know that the proctor is circulating among the breakout rooms. So how do you let students know uh, how to alert the proctor if they need help? What guidance do you give them and how?
Well, they can do it two ways. One, when they're in the breakout room, they can send a message through the chat to the proctor. The other way is for them to just come back to the main room, which is much easier for me because then I can walk them through whatever problem they're having, try to troubleshoot, and then send them back to their breakout room.
So you tell them that in advance about how to do that?
Correct.
Uh-huh.
Correct.
Okay. And I mean, do they ever feel uncomfortable being alone in the breakout room, or what do they say about that?
It's funny. Once they're when they once they're started their once they started their test in the breakout room, they're fine. It's when they're waiting for a proctor to get them started, and it is interesting because we've had a lot of students for some reason get really nervous, and I don't know if they're scared, but they end up either just leaving altogether and going back to their class or coming back to the main room. So I don't know what it is about just being in a space by yourself. I guess for some
Yeah.
people it can be unsettling. So yeah.
Okay. So that's maybe something that they could be coached in ahead of time, right?
That's
Uh,
a good idea. Yeah,
uh-huh.
possibly.
Yeah, just to be patient,
Hmm.
that the proctor will be coming through and just hang in there.
Hmm.
Right. Do you share any specific instructions with them about what happens if they get disconnected somehow, or how they should come back in or
Again,
communicate? Yeah.
yes, again, I always tell them to come back to the main room if they're having technical problems, if they don't understand something. Again, that for me as a proctor, that's much easier than having them either put a message in the chat and just wait. Um, yeah, it works for me.
Okay. So now, one thing I know you recommended in your presentation earlier is to use the e-tests session activity screen, the proctor that is, should do that while the students are taking the test. Can you talk about why that's important and how you do that?
Well, how I do it is I always keep the session activity, I keep it open at all times. And the reason that we do it and I do it is because we want to monitor the students' progress while they're testing. We want to see if they're stuck on a question. We want to see if they're just they're not progressing, or if they're progressing too fast. A couple of times, when I put a student in a breakout room and I'm just been going around and visiting each breakout room, and I noticed that they have just stopped their test. I will know to go back to that breakout room to see what's going on. So or if they are just circling the locator questions over and over again. So that's why it is really important to have the session activity open and to be monitoring each student while they're testing.
And I believe you said that you have a second monitor, so you have that on a separate screen.
Absolutely. I do have two monitors in my office and at home. I'm really thankful that our school was able to provide, all of our proctors with that, because it makes it much easier to have your Zoom and then also to have the session activity open. We have our ASAP open, have my TE open. So it really is, if schools can afford it, it's really helpful.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. I think it can make the proctor's job a lot easier because they don't have to juggle so much on one screen with all
Correct.
those other students that they're testing at the same time. Yeah.
Mhm.
Anything else about that activity screen that you want to share?
Mm. Also, for some reason, we run into an issue where when a student has finished their locator questions, sometimes it'll request that the proctor refresh or go back in and enable the test. So again, that's why it's good to have that screen open at all times. So keep it
Yeah,
open
it's
at all times.
interesting. You were telling us earlier that that is something that only seems to be happening in remote testing. So it's something that CASAS will look into. But it's important for everyone to be aware of that. You can be, seeing when the student is reaching that point to end the locator, and then be ready to intervene if you have to, right?
Yes, exactly.
Mhm.
Also, I want to point out that multiple proctors can use one session activity. You can just use the same registration code that another proctor is using. Some people get confused and think that they have to, log in and log out or take over. It doesn't matter. We can all use that same registration code from my experience. So just a little FYI.
Okay, thank you for that. Um, is there any student feedback about taking the CASAS test remotely?
Most of the students that are able to successfully test are really excited and really happy. So we haven't had any negative feedback at all. There always a little bit of frustration when they can't test. So yeah, I haven't really, most students really seem to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And I mean, I think sometimes programs find that when they try to test multiple students, they end up with, they try to test 5, but then, one doesn't show up, one can't get connected, one doesn't have a device. So how do you deal with that so that you can use your time productively with the proctors?
I tell our proctors to cut your losses. When you have a lot, I mean, honestly, if you have, we have like 10 students and, 2 or 3, the app doesn't download, they're having difficulties. I tell them, you know what, I'm sorry, we can't test today. We will schedule you for another time and then move forward because you can't, we have to use our time wisely. So we can't really focus, on this kind of every single problem. We got to move forward. So, yeah.
So even if you just have 3 instead of 5 that day, you carry on and you just, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So I'm going to pause for a second and ask Janice if there are any questions from the participants that we haven't covered already.
I think there's a few, if we have time.
We do? Yes.
First off, from the proctor's perspective, Tia, who are your proctors? Where are they teachers? Are they people within your staff, or did you actually have to go out and hire more?
That's a good question. So we have 2 main proctors that this has been their job for years, doing it, of course, on site. I'm a proctor, and then we have, I think, 4 or 5 newly certified proctors. The majority of them are actually classified employees. The teachers have expressed interest in becoming proctors, and we were considering that. And I know some schools do allow teachers to become proctors. And actually, we do have one teacher who is actually a proctor. So we have about, I think, 7 or 8 proctors right now. And again, it was all in-house. We had our in-house classified employees certified to become proctors.
Because so many of your students are in the ESL program, have you found it advantageous to have proctors that speak multiple languages?
Absolutely. And in fact, I think with the exception of 2, all of our proctors speak another language. We have Spanish, Chinese, Russian, Tagalog. You can't use it. I sign language, so it can be helpful. So yeah, it is really helpful. And also we do have a really strong student ambassador program and a student volunteer program. So, we use those students as well when we need translation in other languages that we can't provide translation.
That's great. Turning it to the students now, the students, do they primarily have Windows 10 devices that you're testing, or do they have access to loaner devices, like they check in, check out, kind of a librarian technology within your agency?
Yeah, so we only test remotely, on the Windows 10 devices. Those students who don't have that device, our school is very generous. We actually loan out PCs, Windows, to those students who want to take the test on remotely on a computer or just use it for a class, so yes.
Great. And there was a couple questions about the procedural methods when the students are signing into e-test. Do you have a special way that you give them their ID? I've seen it a lot of different ways, like on a little piece of paper or in a memo ahead of time, or just sent to the student on their phone. How do you give the student their ID when they're starting e-test? Do you have any tricks for that?
Well, see, back in my presentation, we ask all of our teachers to give their students their student ID numbers. So 9 times out of 10, they come with their knowing their ID number. So we very rarely have to give it to them. If they do come in, we do have our ASAP open so that we can give them their ID number at that time. But almost all of our students, they have their ID numbers.
Did it take you a long time to work out this whole process to get it to run smoothly?
Run smoothly. Well, again, everything we're still working on it. A lot of it is thanks to, again, our 2 primary proctors and CASAS testers who are already doing it for many, many years. We've used a lot of their the things that they've already had implemented in the past. But we're moving forward. It has made it a little bit easier because we have the schedules and things like that, and having the students already have their ID numbers, and students who are familiar with taking the CASAS test in general, that's also a big help. They know how to click on the little blue arrow to go next and things like that. So
right.
So it
go
has
to the next question.
Exactly. So that's also been helpful.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I think we all appreciated all the tips and very useful information that Tia had to share. Thank you so much, Tia. And you're going to stay on the call. So if people have more questions, maybe you can look in the Q&A box and see if there's anything that you can be answering as we go through the rest of the session.
Absolutely. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you so much. We really appreciate the time you took to do this for us very much. Thanks. All right, so just quickly, we're going to go into the next section about generally about remote testing. And this is all review, but just if any of you are new to CASAS remote testing, we do have these 4 approaches. The ones that you can do multiple test takers with are the approach 2 and 3 on a Windows 10 computer, on a Chromebook with kiosk mode, or an iPad with the special security settings. Then you can do one-on-one remote control or oral responses. So on our website, we have a page devoted to the guidelines for these with step-by-step instructions. So please do go there for all the information you need, and including the technical requirements. Remote testing is really something that CASAS intends to continue very much so as we move into the future. I imagine all of you, if you've been trying it, are aware of some of the unexpected, perhaps, benefits of how you can use remote testing for students who may never even come to your program and only have instruction remotely. And that's helping you to expand your reach. So we are doing some pilots right now. We've been doing them for about 3-4 months. And what we're trying out is it possible to test more than 5 students, up to 12 at a time? And Tia's program, as well as about 10 or 12 others, some of them are trying that. And when they're as experienced as they have become, then they can consider going to more than 5. And we're looking into whether that's viable. Then we've also been doing piloting on taking the test on phones, because as we all know, many of our students don't have a Windows 10 computer or a Chromebook that's enabled, et cetera. But they do have phones. So we are very earnestly looking into that and some of the positives and challenges of that. So we are still trying to get a little bit more data to have a clearer sense of how students do on the phones as compared to on a regular screen. And as hopefully in the next month or 2, we'll be able to give you the results of that that pilot. We're also very actively working on a new version of eTest that will include video conferencing as an integrated feature. So this would be extremely exciting because it would mean that it'll take away the Zoom piece as far as the being able to monitor the students. So that's something that we are currently still working through development and about to go into pilot testing. So we'll keep you posted on that. And as far as third-party proctoring goes, that's something that we would consider if we thought there was a lot of interest in it. So if you are interested in that, please do let us know. Just some reminders that, we do feel compelled to keep repeating these because we keep getting inquiries that indicate that people are not aware that the only kind of remote testing that is allowed is on e-tests and not paper. That although you can come up with some creative ideas, we would it is really not permitted to copy, scan, or reproduce our tests, hold them up to the screen. No, no, no. Send them out or also record the session. So please do adhere to those restrictions. Please don't use the Zoom virtual backgrounds because then you won't be able to see the student, and that's important to make sure no one is there. So in other words, we want you to be creative, just as Tia has demonstrated. You can do a lot of interesting things and work out the kinks of a challenging procedure, but please do follow the guidelines in the process. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Jesse Despain from CASAS, and he is going to talk to you about a few TOPS Pro Enterprise updates.
Hello again, everybody. Nice to be with you. One thing that has changed in this newest build that was released Monday, I believe, and some of you may have seen this already, is that now every user must accept the end user license agreement, and that's called EULA for short. It's that really long legalese kind of thing that nobody likes to read, but the lawyers insist on it, and we really need each person to view that and agree to it. So in the past, you may have had an IT person install TE for you, so you didn't even see the EULA. It may have just, TE may have been on your computer and you were not aware of it. So the next time you log in, you're going to get this message right here, and it says that you need to accept it. You click OK, and then if we can go to the next slide, please. And I'm going to demo this live as well. But if we move, you get this screen here. As the arrow is pointing out there, you have a scroll bar, and please read through everything. Again, I know not everyone enjoys that, but it's important information. It covers our agreement between CASAS and you individually and with your agency. So at the bottom, you have two choices: I accept or I do not accept. And if you click on I do not accept, then this program is going to put you right back to the login screen. You can't use TE if you don't agree to it. So you do need to click on I accept. And then once you've done that, TE records the date that you've accepted the agreement. And if you want to see that at any time or read the agreement again or print it out, you can click on help and then end user license agreement, and you will get a copy of it, and it'll say you agreed to this on March 17th, 2021, or whatever date it was. So it has that record for you. Next slide, please. Okay, so last month we talked about the TE Data Transfer Wizard. This is a great feature that we've had for some time, but it's recently documented and streamlined. We'd like to promote that for everyone to use. It is a really good feature. It allows you, among other things, to bring in tests from another agency. So commonly you may have somebody attend for a few months in a different part of your city, and then, or even a different city, and then they transfer to your school, and rather than give them another CASAS test, you can bring in this test through TOPS Enterprise securely, bring it all into your database, and then you know exactly how they answered the questions before. As it says here in the slide, saves time and money onboarding new students. You don't have to retest them, which is great. we've all heard of over-testing, I think. If you do it too often, we can burn out the students. And for those who report to the NRS, there is a minimum rule of 40 hours. Of course, that's within your own organization, but you don't want to test any sooner than 40 hours. CASAS recommends 70 to 100 hours so that you get the best gains. So this is another way to avoid over testing. Ideally, what you're going to do is every 70 hours or every 100 hours, you're going to give them a new test and see how they've done. And that even includes, if you think outside the box a little bit, that includes previous agency. So this allows you to bring that data in. You're going to run a wizard, and you can get test scores and demographic data. And again, it's transferred electronically, confidential and encrypted. Next page, please. Okay, what are some reasons you would do this? I just mentioned a couple. A student transfers and just took a test not too long ago. So you get to do intake immediately. You can put them into a class, their level. You don't have to give them a test, and it avoids that over testing scenario. The second one there is workforce agency. Many of our workforce customers, they do a CASAS test and then they refer on to another school. Somebody may be below a cut point and they need to get some more instruction. So what you can do is the workforce agency can then send the test data on to the instruction agency, or they can request it, vice versa. And then another possibility we've thought of is within a state, you may decide to share data amongst all of your agencies. And we've already heard of a couple that are looking into that, and this is a good way to do it. So it's a secure, simple way to send the data around. Next slide, please. Next slide.
This is the demo moment.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Thank you, Linda. Let me open up TOPS Enterprise here. And we have, many of you are familiar with the Rolling Hills simulation database. We also have this new one called, it's another simulation database, and we're calling it Big River Community College, hence the brcc.org here. So it's very similar to Rolling Hills, has some of the same data, but it's allowing me right now to transfer data between. So I'm going to log into 4909, which is Big River, not 4908, which is the one we're all familiar with. Has the same accounts. You just need to put this at brcc.org. And then admin is the password for this one. Once I log in, we're going to get that message. I'm just going to show you how that went, how that goes. So it should pop up here. Okay, I need to agree to the EULA. I'll click OK. And then this pops up and I can read through it. I can understand it and then click I accept. Again, if I click this, I do not accept, I get kicked back to the login screen. Try again. Okay, I click I accept. This logs me in, brings up my start screen. Just again, to show you here under the help menu, it tells me I accepted it on 3/17, and then there's a copy of it. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here is go to students, records, students, demographics. And I have some students already in here that I've prepared. An important field that you can add here is, I've just right-clicked on the title bar, data sharing consent status. This is an important factor in sending the data over. These are some that I worked with earlier. So it has to be signed. The student has to agree to send data back and forth between multiple agencies, between two agencies, I should say. And what I'm going to do here, you can do it one at a time. And in fact, that would be the common way to do it. Because as you can imagine, not everybody comes from the same school, right? Unless maybe you have that workforce scenario. People are coming from Florida and Texas and California, maybe from the next city over. So most often you wouldn't do this with multiple students, but you can. And so I'm going to do this with 6 people. I just did shift click to select all of them. And then what you do is it's going to operate on these that are selected in blue. I'll click more and then request data. This brings up the wizard. We call it the data transfer wizard. And what you see right away here is some of them are in pink or red, and that means there's a problem. So out of all of these, only 2 of them are actually eligible to be transferred. And there's different reasons for that. So this first one is fine. The second one, we have the required fields being the student ID, the gender, the birth date. However, this person did not sign a consent form. So they did not agree to share data. They cannot be included in this wizard. So they're excluded already here. And if I want to, I can remove them by selecting that and clicking remove selected records. So now I have the 2 white ones here at the top. Luis here, he signed the consent form, but he doesn't have a birth date. So one of the things that TE is going to do is match on his name, his gender, and his birth date. Without that birth date, it's a little difficult to tell which Luis it is amongst many agencies. So that's a requirement. You need to find out his birth date. This third one, signed the consent, but we don't know anything about him. No name, no gender, no birth date. I'm sure you've all seen that in your database from time to time. You need to go get with the student and get more information. G at the end here, we have everything, name, gender, birth date. However, we don't even know about the consent. This is set to unknown. So we don't know if she was presented with a form, if she signed it, if she knows anything about it. That's also not allowed. So I could remove any of these. I also don't have to. When I click next, it's going to just process these top 2 who have everything. Okay, now I happen to know that my other agency is 4908. That's the Rolling Hills database. I'm going to search. You can also search by name or lots of other fields, the state. You need to enter something here for it to search. Okay, it found Rolling Hills. And you potentially could have multiple here. So whichever one you've clicked on is the one you're going to request from. In this case, 4908 Rolling Hills. I click next. There are my 2 students. So the other 3 dropped off. They were in red. They didn't have the necessary information. Here I can see all some of the information about them. I can choose to request their demographic data. So perhaps if the other agency has an email address for them or phone number, that can come over. You don't have to bring that information over. If, maybe you just want to use what you already have. You already know that's up to date. So that's a possibility. And then you can request tests. And this is generally what you want to do is bring over the tests, but you also don't have to do that. You can do a comment. What you have. You can say anything here that helps the other agency to understand they're going to receive this notification within TE. And you also have this ability to do set all as current record. So now that's my comment for everything. And I could also do demographics and tests that way. You can do it individually, whichever one you've selected. Okay, we'll click next. My account is administrator 12. I'll just put in my real information here. Putting the phone number is helpful. Excuse me. So if the person at the other agency has a question, they can pick up the phone and call me. And if they don't understand what it's about, they can call me. That's for sure the best way to do it, the easiest way. Communicating back and forth through TE is very secure. It's very convenient, but it's maybe not the best way to let them know everything about the student and why you need the information. You also don't have to provide this. You can clear it and you don't have to give them anything about yourself if you don't want them contacting you. Okay, here's a summary. These are the 2 students. I'll click finish. It's going to process in here. Hopefully it says succeeded. It does. Both were processed. Okay. So that's done. We've requested these 2 folks right here. Now what I'm going to do is open another instance of TE and log in to 4908. So now I'm pretending to be the administrator on the other end. I like to use administrator 12. So here it's RHAS, Rolling Hills Adult School, password admin. And I'm logging in now this is the person receiving the request. So in my little scenario here, the person at Big River has asked for data from Rolling Hills. So now this is the administrator logging in for the day. And if you have your start page enabled, which it's a good idea to enable it, you get this notification up here. Okay, 2 pending data sharing requests. And it also tells me about release notes for the latest build. So when I click on this notification, it tells me that someone at Big River has requested these 2 students. Now, I was able to request 2 at a time, but you can only process 1 at a time. It wouldn't make sense to try and do both of these. See, it's grayed out. So you have to decide on a person by person basis what you're going to share. I'll click process request. And first you have to say whether your agency even allows data sharing. If not, then it stops. Okay, now these are 2 matches within my database, my Rolling Hills database, that happen to match the birth date. So there's 2 people with that same birth date, common thing to have happen. However, this one is the same name, same student ID. Yeah, same student ID. Could be a different ID, of course, at a different agency. And they've signed consent. So this is the right person. And I'm going to say student identified, and I accept sharing the data. I can do these other options here if I decide I don't have them, or I don't find them, or I don't agree, or they didn't sign consent. Click next. This is all the demographic information that will be shared. If I decide I don't want to send over their highest year of school and the fact that they had school outside of US, I uncheck it. I can do that for any of this information. Most cases, you're going to share everything. Click next. Okay, now here's the meat of it. These are the 2 tests for that person. I could decide to only share the reading test and remove the listening test if I wanted to. These are the most recent tests for that student. Undo remove because I actually want to send them everything. Okay, we'll click next. Oh yeah, my name over here is John Smith. And I have a phone number. And then you can put a comment, you don't have to. Click next. Okay, now this is a summary. What it's telling me is we're going to send across all of these sections of information, because remember I selected everything except for highest year of school, so that's not in this list here. And then 2 test records will be shared, and those were the 2 records we just looked at. Okay, click finish. Okay, completed. So now those test records have been transferred over to 4909. If I go here, the next time I log in, it's going to show me a notification. In fact, if I go to the start page, I should see that. There we go. So it shows up as a data sharing response. Same thing will happen when you log in. Here it is. John Smith replied and said, yes, you can have this person's data, Francina. What I need to do on my end now is click process response. So I see what they sent. Student identified, sharing accepted. There's John if I want to call him. And then here is a summary of what was sent. So as you'll notice, that highest year of school is not included because I had unchecked it. Again, you can uncheck any category. And then here are the 2 test records that I really want. Tells me the raw score, the scale score, the form, and the modality. A reading and a listening looks good for an ESL student. I could also delete some of these if I didn't particularly care about a listening appraisal or a reading test. But I'm going to take both. I click next. Here's a summary, and then those records go into the database. And they are now copied into my 4909. So the system knows what the next assigned test is going to be, and it's automatically on my agency is going to give them the correct next test, which is ideal, and that's what we all want.
All right, Jesse, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Excellent.
Yeah, let's we will, as we said, post this, and you'll be able to go back and watch again and again if you need to see that demonstration that Jesse just gave. And there's a help document on our CASAS website that will also take you through the steps to do this. So hopefully you can really take advantage of this. So just want a couple things in our last minute. We have the CASAS National Summer Institute coming up in June. You can register for it now. It's going to be very exciting and a chance for people who can't normally get there to go. We have trainings on June 17th and 18th, and then we have our workshops and panels on a whole range of topics the following week on 2 days. We do have live TE Basics training. The next one is April 16th, and that's something you can click on the website to register for. Really gives you good basic information, as it says, about TOPS Pro Enterprise for anybody who would like. We have also something called live facilitated implementation trainings. You can do them on your own online in the Moodle modules, but you can also go to a live one if you prefer to have someone walk you through it. The next one is April 6th, and you can sign up for the others. We're going to be offering them all spring, and you get a certificate of completion for those. We do have office hours, continue to have them every Friday at 11 Pacific, 2 Eastern. We are going to be at COABE in force. That's starting next Monday. We have so many sessions, you can see them here. Again, this PowerPoint will be on our website, and you'll see in more detail if you want to go and take a look. But we have, as you can see, sessions on all kinds of topics, IELCE, workplace, etc. Remote testing as well. So please check us out at COABE, and we'll have a booth there. Our next monthly webinar is on Wednesday, April 14th, same time, same place. So we definitely look forward to seeing you there soon. Hopefully you'll be able to register right after this webinar ends. Here's information if you need to contact us about anything at all. So thank you so much for joining. We will stay on to answer any additional questions. Jesse will be here to answer questions about the data transfer wizard. If you have more, Tia is still around if you want to ask her questions. And plus our entire, a lot of our staff are still here to answer. So thank you for joining us today. This is the official end of the webinar today, but please stay on and continue to ask questions as you would like. Again, thanks so much. See you next month.